Well, and I think you do it very well. The culture that you're exploring in northern Minnesota is, I know you told me how to do this and I'm going to forget it.
Anishinaabe.
Right?
Right.
Which is also Ojibwe?
Right. What you have is the large tribal family, which is the Anishinaabe. And within that, then you have many subgroupings, the Ojibwe, the Fox, the Potawatomi, the Cree, and they all belong to the Anishinaabe family, but they then all are sub-tribal groups.
Well,
And the Ojibwe then in Minnesota.
okay, because I grew up in Illinois and I can remember the Fox River and Potawatomi.
Oh, sure.
Those are all names
Sure.
that I knew.
So what happened is that these are all, these began as part of the Algonquin group of tribes, and as a result of the warring with the Iroquois, they ended up being forced farther and farther east, so they spread around the Great Lakes. So you have, you know, in your neck of the woods, they settled for a long period of time, and gradually with the coming of the white man were forced farther and farther west. And they in turn forced out the Lakota who used to be there. So you had many Indian wars between the Lakota and the Ojibwe who were moving in.
Right. Actually, you said the Algonquin moved west, but they in fact moved east. I mean, they were east and they moved
They
west,
moved west,
right? Because
right.
they were
From east to west.
Right. Weren't they up around Hudson Bay
That's
and in
right.
New York and so forth?
That's right.
But your character, unlike Hillerman, is not a full-blooded Anishinaabe. He's half Irish, half Anishinaabe?
He's actually 1/4 Ojibwe and 3/4 Irish.
Oh, it's a smaller mix. Okay.
Smaller mix. His grandmother was, his mother was half Anishinaabe and his grandmother was full-blood Anishinaabe.
And did you do that to both give him an entree into the tribe but also set up some conflicts?
Bingo. You know, one of the things that you look at as a writer is where are the opportunities for conflict and resonance. And when I made the decision to set the book up in northern Minnesota and realized you couldn't deal with issues in northern Minnesota without dealing with how the whites and the Indians have to come together. And looking at that, the idea of creating a character who was himself part of both cultures, had a foot in both cultures, and is never quite sure really where he belongs. That was so resonant with possibilities that I couldn't let it go. My problem was really settling on what combination he was going to be, because the Iron Range of Minnesota, the North Country, has just an enormous number of ethnic groups there as a result of the iron mining and the timber. So you've got Slavs, and you've got Finns, and you've got Irish, and you've got Italians, and you've got Norwegians, and you've got... So the question was, what is Cork? I knew that he was going to be part Ojibwe. What else was he? And I thought, well, okay, is he Anishinaabe Italian? Is he Anishinaabe Greek? And I happened to sit then in the time that I was dealing with that issue, I happened to sit on a panel, an arts board panel, with a woman who was in fact part Irish and part Ojibwe. And she was such a phenomenal personality that I thought, of course, this person is Irish and Ojibwe. And it worked out really well for this reason. I always knew my character was going to be named Cork.
Ah.
That was one of the things I knew about him, because I envisioned him as a character that no matter how far down he went, he would always bob back up to the surface. So I knew that was a part of his nature. When I decided that he was going to be Irish and realized that Cork, of course, was short for Corcoran O'Connor. It was meant to be.
It did work out well. And you have dropped him into, well, as I remember when Iron Lake opens, he was the sheriff, is that right?
At one point in time it was this, just before Iron Lake opens.
Right, but that job is no longer his.
That's right.
And he's been married to Jo.
That's correct.
Who is not part
That's
Anishinaabe.
Right. She's not from that area.
Right.
She's an outsider.
And they have, is it 2 children?
3.
3.
Two daughters and a son.
Right. And they're separated. That's not going well.
That's right.
So you start him out pretty far down.
Yeah, I bring the reader right into the fact that Cork is in a personal meltdown. His life is in disarray. He's been kicked out of his house. He's lost his job as sheriff. Neither the whites nor the Indians think very much of him at that point as a result of an incident that occurred before the book actually begins and that we did talk about in the book. So he's pretty far down. The one bright point in his life is his relationship with the waitress Molly Nurmi. So through the book, he's really trying to figure out what's important in his life. What does he hold to? When everything else falls away, what is it that you wrap your life around? And for Cork, although he has trouble accepting it, for Cork it's his family. That's
Right.
really what he wants to hold on to. And so much of his action, much of the odd decisions that he makes in the book are motivated by the fact that what he really wants is his family back.
And that's something you then get to explore in the sequels, Boundary Waters, and more particularly, I think, in the new book, Purgatory Ridge.
When I, about halfway through Iron Lake, I realized that it wasn't going to be just one book, that the complexities of the relationships and where I saw them ultimately being wouldn't let me accomplish all of that in a single book. I realized, thinking far out, that probably 3 books it would take me to bring these people around to where I envisioned them being in their lives. So I knew about halfway through Iron Lake that there would be at least 3 books involved in this, with these people.
Does that mean that you're contemplating somebody else, or that you're just going to set them off in a new direction?
My publisher won't let me stop with 3 books.
I didn't think so. I was just checking in here.
The manuscript I've just finished isn't a Corcoran and O'Connor novel. I needed to take a break. I needed to clean my palette. I honestly didn't have, when I finished the whole arc of that imagining, I didn't know where to go from there. And I didn't want to try to force a book into a series just to have the next book in the series. So I had another idea that I pursued. And while I did that, I began to work on and it's a very magical process to me. The idea for the next book began to kind of percolate, and one day it came to me almost fully blown. This is the next story. This is how things occur. So I'm very excited about the prospect of sitting down now and writing the next book, the next Corcoran O'Connor.
It's not a pattern that's uncommon. I've met more and more authors who have written several books about a set of characters, A characters. Actually, you can't ever be a character unless, well,
That's
back to Ross MacDonald, it could be a character. You know, you could have Lou Archer and he sort of blew away his baggage, or even Travis McGee to great degree would do that. But today, a character is generally sort of a corporate thing. You know,
a corporate thing, and you know what? I think readers like a lot of the adjunct characters just as much, if not more, than sometimes they like the protagonist.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Plus, it gives you the option of bringing different ones of them forward, so that you can vary the cast without, you know, without stretching things. But anyway, my point is that I think that most writers reach a stage in which they're just kind of either out of ideas or fed up, or you know, they're feeling shackled, or they're not, or they're suffering block, whatever you want to call it, and that it's a really good idea to try something different.
I think if they don't, you see it in the book. If they're tired, if they're doing it simply because they have a contractual deadline to meet. You know, I've read so many books, and that was my thought. This is not a good book, and I've trusted this person in the past. This person has done wonderful work. Why isn't this one as good? There's not a heart here. The energy here isn't here, and the only explanation I have for it is it was written to meet a contractual deadline. So yeah, I wanted also early on, the reason I went with a 4th book that isn't Cork, I wanted early on to introduce whatever readership I might have to the idea that periodically I'm not going to do a Cork book. I want to do another kind of book. I want to broaden my scope as a writer. As an artist, I want to try different things.
Sure.
And that's, for me, that's a part of the joy of writing, is hopefully each of these books accomplish something slightly different than the others. Iron Lake was one kind of a book. Boundary Waters, although it used the same characters, really was a very different kind of book than Iron Lake was. Purgatory Ridge is yet a different book. I'd love readers to come to my books thinking it's never going to be the same old thing with Kent. He'll give us a different kind of a read each time. I would love to have readers think that about me.
Oh, you convinced me.
Oh, great.
And, you know, as you know, because you and I talked about it, I wasn't so fond of the thriller, the second one, Boundary Waters, which is more of a chase novel, than I was. I think Purgatory Ridge is probably, well, and it should be, is your 3rd book, your most mature work, if I can use that. It's a really resonant book, and you know, just an extraordinary book, I think. I liked it enormously.
I like you, Barbara. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Well, I wouldn't say it if it weren't true.